Позвольте вас поприветствовать, уважаемые участники предстоящего онлайн-мастер-класса. Приветствует вас Ульяновская область, фонд «Ульяновск. Культурная столица». Меня зовут Диана Кавелла. Фонд «Ульяновск. Культурная столица» активно развивает партнерство с зарубежными коллегами. И сегодня с большим удовольствием я представляю вам нашего партнера из Японии, из Токио, профессионального фотографа Таро Ирей. Таро-сан разговаривает и ведет бизнес на японском, английском, испанском, португальском и немецком языках. Сегодняшний мастер-класс пройдет на английском языке. Как внештатный фотограф и видеограф, Таро Ирей работает в различных командных конфигурациях и ролях, заботясь не только о фотографии, но и о звуке, освещении, логистике. В зоне интересов фотографа издательская деятельность, мода, еда, новости, спорт, мероприятия. Он мастерски организует съемки как в студии, так и в иных различных ландшафтах. Работая с клиентами, которые требуют, чтобы он путешествовал по всей Японии и за рубежом, Таро Ирей привык работать в одиночку, с ограничениями во времени и пространстве. У него есть опыт работы и в телевизионных новостях. Он работает с международными командами телевизионных каналов и продюсерских компаний из Азии, Европы, Северной и Южной Америки. Среди его клиентов всемирно известные рекламные и пиар-фирмы, розничные бренды, финансовые учреждения, некоммерческие организации и спортивные мероприятия. Его работы публикуются в журналах, на веб-сайтах, а также в корпоративных и рекламных средствах массовой информации. Надеюсь, уважаемые коллеги, дорогие друзья, этого описания достаточно, чтобы настроиться на продуктивный онлайн-мастер-класс, который называется «Фото и видео в одном кейсе». На протяжении 1 часа Таро-сан поделится с нами информацией.
Hello, my name is Taro. I hope you can all hear me and see me. If not, I hope someone will let me know. But thank you very much for being in this class. I'm going to briefly talk about video and stills as a combined job. Normally, it's two different jobs, but many photographers now are switching to video or including video in their work. This is something that can be made with tools that you already have as a photographer, or sometimes, you know, when you work your way up, you will start to increase and change gear. But since I travel a lot, I prefer to keep my gear compact. Obviously, everything depends on the job. Are we okay? Okay. Yes, okay, sorry. So, as a photographer, you know already the basics of video as well. There are some things that are different. The main thing, like in photography, you know, you can control your picture with the shutter speed, with the aperture, and with your ISO. But in video, the shutter speed tends to be fixed. So when you want to control your exposure, you only have ISO and exposure. But if you change ISO and exposure, you know that you're going to have a different feel to the picture, and your depth of field is going to change. So that's one of the main differences. And obviously in video, there is sound. And sound is something that is very important, and it's very overlooked when people switch from stills to video. Sound is very complicated, so I will just show you some things that we use for sound, but it's something that you will learn and something that you will probably have other people help you as well. And the other difference, obviously, it's with the lights, you will need to use, you know, constant light, not flash. And for that, you probably know there's very big LED panels and so, but now there are smaller lights that you can carry in your bag and take with you. So I'm going to show you a little video with my bag, and that will probably help you understand what I carry and how things work for me carrying one bag. brief and very fast introduction of how many things I carry in my bag. You don't need all of that, of course, but for me, that's what I take on a basic shoot when I'm going to combine both stills and video. There are times when I'm only doing stills, there are times when I'm only doing video. The main advantage nowadays with a photographer that can do video as well is that sometimes the job requires both, but there's not enough budget for hiring two people, and also there's not enough time. So when you are in a shoot and you have to do video and someone else is doing stills, or the other way around, you have to manage the time, and sometimes the other person takes too long and it leaves less time for you to do your job. So when you can manage both, sometimes it's easier, but it depends on every job. I'm not saying that everyone should do both all the time. A lot of the times I work with other people. It's case by case, and in videography especially, sometimes you need a team. You need people to do first camera, second camera. You need people to do sound. Sometimes there's other people doing the lights, and the team can grow. There's someone just dedicated to downloading the data and making sure everything is working, and there's people that are editing. There's people that are going to color correct and give a special tone of the video color wise. So for video, it's good to meet people and to have friends. Also, when you are starting with video, you need to buy some gear, and that obviously is something that if you need all these things, you don't want to buy all by yourself. So maybe you can share with some friends at the beginning, and then you will little by little acquire things, and you can build your gear. You can also rent, of course. So going to back to what we spoke about, shutter speed, not being able to, you cannot change the shutter speed in video because the shutter speed is linked to your frame rate. So if you have a frame rate of 24 or 25 or 30, and that depends whether you're also shooting in NTSC or PAL. Usually Europe is PAL. Sorry? Yes, so when you want to control the shutter, the exposure on your video, you cannot change the shutter speed because the shutter speed is linked to the frame rate. So you have the camera shooting at 24, 25 or 30, and that's because there's 24 or 30 or 25 because Europe usually has a different system than the US, Japan, and most of South America. So depending on that, you will have to select the frame rate, and then your shutter speed will be locked to that. So it will be between 50 and 100 maybe. So if you cannot change the shutter speed, then you need to control the light. And if you don't want to change the exposure, or you don't want to change the ISO because it's going to change the feeling of the look of the video, then the one thing you can do is use filters. Normally you would use ND filters, and they are this, like sunglasses basically for your camera. And with this you will bring the exposure down. But in order to use something like that, usually you use a matte box. This goes in front of your lens. This goes in front of the lens like this, and then you add the filters to the front. Oops. So you add the filters, but this is very big, and besides being a place to put the filters, it's also the lens hood on your camera, the lens hood of the camera, because you cannot use this, then you use this one here, which is a hood as well, to prevent flare. But if you're a photographer and if you want to go compact, then you can use a regular ND filter, but this one here is a variable ND. And so the darker you bring it, the lower you can bring your exposure. Therefore, you will be able to expose correctly to using that shutter speed, which is considerably slower than the shutter speed you would use in photography. Now, when you use these filters, if you buy one, buy the biggest filter size for your biggest lens, and then just use adapter rings to bring it down to the other lenses. That way you only need one. You don't need to buy one for each lens, and that also brings your package much smaller. Are we okay on pace, Maria? Okay, well, I guess we're okay. Yes. So the other thing that obviously when you go from stills to video is that hand-holding a camera can be good for certain things, but most of the time if you just hand-hold this, first it's very tiring, second it's not very stable, and even if you use stabilization on the lens, it's not obviously as stable. So it's a feel, but if you're shooting things like corporate videos, for example, or if you're shooting a message, you want the camera to be still. Now, if you're not moving the camera, then your regular tripod with the regular tripod head, even a ball head, is fine. But when you are doing camera movements, then you need a video head for your tripod. And so normally the difference with a video head is that it has a fluid head, so it's much smoother when you move. Not just the tilting, but also the panning. And this one is a flat head because this is made for a regular tripod, not a video tripod. The video tripod has a little leveling half ball, which makes it easier to level the camera to the horizon. If you have a tripod that has already that, then that's great. But if you don't, then you can use a little adapter, which is, maybe I can show it here. So this, and with this you can level your video head on a regular still tripod. So you don't have to buy a new tripod for that, just the head. So if you use a tripod, then the difference with stills is the movement. So there are certain advantages to using a tripod, doing video in general with lenses, is that in stills, if you want to shoot a wide shot, you have to have a very wide angle lens. In video, sometimes you don't have the lens as wide, but you can always pan or tilt, and then you will show the whole picture. So in video, you have a little bit more options. If you're a photographer and you know how to compose your picture, then it's basically the same way to composing pictures in video. The difference is obviously when you're making a movement, you want to make sure that everything included in your move is something that you want to show in the picture. So if you set your camera, you set your tripod, you level your camera, and then you want to make sure that everything that you're going to show in that movement is something that is okay in the picture. Other than that, there are certain things that you need to be careful also. For example, the shutter speed will affect how the light comes into the sensor, and sometimes you will get what we call flicker. So you will see these lights. Yes, sorry. Let's do this again. So when you choose your shutter speed and you're indoors under artificial lights like fluorescent lights or LED lights, always check that you don't get flicker, because this flicker, you will see this movement on your screen. Sometimes it's very subtle, like a little line going up, and that is very hard to correct in post-production. And that is why I prefer to use video LED lights and not shoot with the, the artificial lights that are in that house or in that office or, where you're shooting, because then you can get that flicker and it's very hard to control. You can change the shutter speed a little bit and that will help you get rid of the flicker sometimes, but sometimes no matter what you do, the flicker to a certain degree is still there. So are we okay? Is there anyone asking any questions that were not okay? So the other thing that when you shoot a video with your DSLR,
Таро-сан,
okay, so when you're
несколько
shooting
человек.
video with your DSLR, one thing that is going to... Yes?
Ага. Таро-сан,
Yes?
несколько человек, особенно из других городов, спрашивают сейчас в личных сообщениях, что по работе не смогли присоединиться к мастер-классу и интересуются, можно ли потом поделиться с ними этой видеозаписью.
Sorry, say that again? Yes, I will post it on Instagram or Vimeo, so they can take a look. Is that okay?
Окей, мы тоже ведем запись, поэтому, с вашего позволения, дадим ее тем, кому это будет нужно. Спасибо, продолжаем. Напомню, задавайте вопросы в чат.
Yes, the video I showed I will post later on Instagram and also on Vimeo, so that way you can take a look at it and pause and see what is in the bag. If I had made it regular speed, we will have ended this class with just a video. So that's why it was very fast. Going back to the difference between video and stills, the other difference that I mentioned was the lights. In stills we use flashes most of the time. Some people use obviously constant lights as well, in which case you can use them for video, but just double check that they have no flicker, as I mentioned, because that is the biggest problem. Also, you will have to white balance properly if your lights are not the correct color temperature, either daylight or tungsten or something in between. And when it comes to lights, normally we will bring big lights, which is hard for me to carry if I'm traveling. But lately, LED lights, small lights, have become more powerful. So like a small light like this light is from Lupo, from Italy, and you can change the color temperature, and you can also change the way the light, how strong the light is. But a light like this, if you shine it on people, is very harsh. So there are big lights, and there are smaller lights like that with a lot of power, and then there are lights that are much smaller and have RGB, so you can change many colors in them, and sometimes they have like effects. You can make different effects for your lights, which sometimes is handy. But in normal situations, when you are shooting an interview, same as with photography, if you come into a room and the light is only overhead and you get shadows under the nose and the eyes, you usually shoot with a softbox or an umbrella, and you shoot through your umbrella and you get a nice soft light on the person. And with the same tool, with the same umbrella that you use for stills, you can diffuse your LED light, and sometimes if it's not enough power, then you will probably put two together and use the same umbrella adapter to connect it to your light stand. I use carbon light stands because they are lighter, in weight, but stands are the same for both stills and video. And with this, with diffusing the light, sometimes I use something like this, which you put two lights, and then you diffuse the light. These lights are operated with battery, but you can also connect AC, and you can also connect AC and USB. So you have many options on how to power your lights. The one thing that I recommend is when you buy any gear, try to stick to things that use the same batteries. In the case of in my case, I use the Canon cameras, and so both my DSLRs use the same battery, which means that I can carry less batteries and less chargers that I can combine for both cameras. In video, you will use a lot more battery because your LCD screen is you're using the LCD screen, so that takes a lot more battery. So you have to have extra batteries, and you have to have chargers. So if you're in the field, there is obviously your standard charger that comes with the camera that you plug into the wall. But lately there are these ones that are USB, and so I can plug it to a USB battery and charge, or I can plug it to a USB adapter and charge from the wall, and it takes two batteries and it's much smaller. This is for the NP batteries, the Sony style batteries, that are the batteries that the lights use. Now, small lights are good in certain cases. In certain cases you need something a little bit bigger, but because I don't carry the big light normally when I'm traveling, when I'm in the city and it's a video shoot dedicated, then I will bring the big lights. But I lately use this one, which is about twice the size. And with this one, you have AC, you have all the controls here, but it's much brighter than a normal, a small battery light. But this one can also be operated with batteries. Normally in video you will hear people say, they need the big batteries for video, either Anton Bauer or B-mount. This is a B-mount battery. And this is much bigger than a small NP battery. But even if you buy gear that uses these batteries are very expensive, and they're heavy, and then you need a big charger for them. Now you can also use some adapter plates. What do you put it? You can use an adapter like this, and this is basically the mount for the battery, but then you're using your regular NP batteries. These NP batteries are a little bit different because besides just being the battery, they also have USB, so you can charge your phone or other USB devices, and then you can charge them with a regular micro USB cable. So if you don't have your charger, you can charge this just by plugging with a micro USB. So that's also another advantage, when you are traveling with with a small bag. Are we okay, Maria? Okay. So the other thing in video is sound, and with sound, microphones. Most people, they tend to buy a microphone like this. It's a microphone, and you put this on top of your camera. and you can, record the sound with this, but the most important thing to know about sound and microphones is that it's not the quality of the microphone. Of course, a good quality microphone is always better, but even a good quality microphone will not give you good sound if the microphone is very far. So if the microphone is far away, then the sound is not very good, because you will catch the sounds that are closer to the microphone better than the sounds that are away from the microphone. So when you are recording just ambient sound, putting the microphone on your camera is good. Just be careful not to make too much noise when you're handling the camera. But if you're recording an interview, if you're recording, the CEO of a company giving a speech, you don't want the microphone to be away. You want the microphone to be very close. And very close is the closest you can be. So if this is the frame, and I will put the microphone just there where you cannot see it, but it's very close to me. That way, your sound will be better. There are there are not only microphones like this. We will also later use like a shotgun mic like this that requires phantom power, and that's why in my bag I have the this preamp. That what it does is it gives voltage to the microphone, and it also it's easier to regulate the sound level on the camera, and because this is much bigger than the smaller preamps on the DSLR, the sound on this is much better. Other things that you use for sound, where did I put it? You can use a wireless mic, and so one receiver goes on your camera and this goes on the person. You can clip it to your pocket. You can put the microphone here. You can hide it with tape, and then this, because it's very close, it will give you good sound. But you have to be careful when you use these kind of microphones, because the cable moving can also create sound, noise that you don't want in your recording. So you always need to monitor your sound. You always need to listen, not just look at the levels on your camera, but actually listen to the sound, to hear the voice, and to see if what you're looking in your camera is not just the person's voice, but there's also a lot of other noises around. So with sound, I said at the beginning, sound is very complicated. Sound is something that I'm still learning. I am not an expert in sound, so I sometimes hire sound recordists if I need, to record multiple people at the same time, because when you're shooting video, if you're also monitoring the sound and you are alone, you have to be multitask. You have to multitask a lot. You have to look at your exposure. You have to look at your focus. You have to look at your framing, obviously, and then you're going to see that, are the lights working? You're listening to the person talking, and you're also monitoring the sound. Sometimes you are also asking questions. So it's a lot to do, and this is something that takes practice, and this is something that has a limit as well. So if it's one person, maybe I'll do it, but if I have to do it with 3-4 people, and this is going to go live, then this is not something that I can correct later in post and correct the levels after. So when we are working with several cameras, several interviewers, and several interviewees, then you probably need other people to help you. So one thing that I would recommend to all of you watching is that maybe this is a good opportunity for you all to, some of you to get to know who are the photographers or videographers in your area, and meet them, talk to them. Well, right now, not meet them in person maybe, but talk to them, because at some point in your job you will need help from other people, and you will need other people to work together with you. So this is now that you have chat on Zoom, maybe somehow you can meet each other later, talk to each other later, and because you will need help, for sure, you will need help. Are we okay, Maria? Okay, so this is my video camera. It's a cinema camera, and now it has a big cinema lens. So if we, it's quite big, and actually it's on the smaller scale of video cinema cameras. But as you can see, it's DSLR is more compact. Why I have one camera like this and then I have these DSLRs as well is because depending on the job, sometimes you need something like this. If you are going to run sound, and you're going to put wireless mics and everything in this camera, it's much easier to do. I don't need to connect a preamp on the DSLR. Everything is built in. I have the sound input, and I have the control for the sound here, and then I have peaking to help me with the focusing, and all these exposure tools that make shooting much easier. But you can also do it with these cameras, or you can use an external recorder. When you're using an external recorder, the main advantage is that obviously your screen is bigger, so it's easier to see. And then when you're recording, the file type that you're recording is usually less compressed, which means that when you import your data into your computer, even if you don't have a very high-end computer, then the computer will be able to play and edit the files. If you use very compressed files, it makes the computer processor work harder in order to play back or edit files. So there are certain advantages to using a bigger camera or also using an external recorder. Right now I cannot show it to you because I'm recording the meeting with that. But when you search, you will see a lot of people using external recorders. And one of the reasons is because you will get a better file or an easier to edit file, and also all those tools that you have in the cinema camera, like the peaking and your waveform and all these exposure tools that you can see in the camera, sometimes you don't have in a DSLR, you will probably have in your external recorder. Are we keeping up? Okay. So when it comes to using the camera handheld, the DSLR and the mirrorless cameras, the main difference is that when you're shooting handheld with a DSLR, you have to look at the picture on the back of your screen, which means that you are just away from the screen in order to see, and that means that you only have 2 points of contact of the camera with your body, so it's not as stable. Also, if you're in bright light outside, you will not be able to see much of the picture here, so you will need a loop sometimes, and that helps you with a 3-point, like if you were using the finder, but then you cannot use the touch screen if you have a touch screen. With a mirrorless, the main advantage is that you have the viewfinder is an actual screen, so you can look through the viewfinder even when you are shooting video, and that is a big advantage because then you have the camera close to you, it shakes less, and if you have the LCD screen, you can also use it to focus with with your thumb moving around and choosing the focus point. So if you're shooting both stills and video, the mirrorless camera has an advantage over the DSLR, but the DSLR has a big advantage over the mirrorless in terms of there is no lag between the viewfinder and the actual picture, the action. So if you're shooting action, if you're shooting people moving, if you're shooting sports, your DSLR is probably easier to use, because with the mirrorless you will always have a little bit of a lag, so you will always be a little bit behind. So what you are seeing already passed, so you will miss the peak of the action, that what you wanted to shoot. You can time it obviously with practice, but if you're working you want to make sure that you get the picture. So that's why although I bought the mirrorless camera, I'm still using the DSLR for many shoots. One of the things with this particular camera, the EOS R, is that if you use it with Canon EF lenses, with the normal lenses for this camera, you use it with an adapter, but that adapter, one of those adapters, has a filter tray. And with this filter tray, I can put like a PL filter, or I can also use an ND filter for this in here, which means that I can change with the variable ND, I can change the strength of the filter, and I can leave it like that and change lenses without having to unthreaten the lens, the filter from the lens. If you're using a DSLR and you have the filter on the front of your lens, sometimes it's good to have the magnetic filter adapters, so you can just take it out and put it back, but you have to put one in each of your lenses so that it works properly. Okay, so is there any more questions about video than sound or lights, or are we good? Are we good to go? Continue? Oh, okay. One of the things that if you're hand holding the camera, this is good. Sometimes you can put something like this, a handle, and then it's more solid to use. And when you have a cage on the camera, then you can mount other things like your preamp. You can mount a monitor, you can mount a light if you need, you can mount a microphone. So sometimes having a cage with multiple points to add accessories is good, but you don't need to use the cage all the time, because if you're shooting stills and video, also you want to make sure that the cage you buy is a cage that allows you to still use your hot shoe, so that you can put your flash or your flash controller on your camera. Now, you can use a gimbal, which, well, this one has a lot of cables because I have a wireless transmitter hooked to it. But with this, you put your camera on the gimbal, and then when you move, you can see it here. Then when you move, it will help you with the camera shake, because it will move this way and this way. The one thing that when you see gimbal movements and you think that if you get one of these, your shots are going to be very much more stable. Yes, they will be stable, but there's one thing that the gimbal doesn't fix, and it's this movement. When you're walking, if you're not careful how you walk, the gimbal is still going to give you this move, and that's something that you want to avoid. So buying all this gear It's fun. We always like to buy gear, but you have to practice, and you have to make sure that you know how to use not just the settings on the gimbal, not just how to balance it, but also you have to practice walking with the gimbal. So for regular, when you're starting from stills to video, I don't recommend you do this kind of walking shots or gimbal shots. It's much easier to concentrate on the tripod and have your, tilts and panning motions. And you want to practice with your tripod as well. You want to make sure that it's suitable for the camera and the lens that you're using, and you have to balance it properly on the tripod as well. The reason why is because when you're doing moving shots, there's so many elements that will influence your shot, and there's so many things that you can do wrong. And if the shot is not really smooth, then using a gimbal is kind of counterproductive, because you don't get the very smooth shot. You get something that is a little bit wobbly. So it's either you get it very smooth or you just go handheld. So when you're starting, focus on the basics. As with photography, when you started with photography, at the beginning, you did simple shots. You started with one camera, one lens. You tried everything you could with that. You learn how you use your camera very well before you go into the next step. And with video, it's the same. You know a lot of the basics that come from stills that you can use in video. You have the advantage that if you already know how to frame things, your composition is very important. So that will help you in video as well. But you need to practice, and just having all this gear is not something that is going to make you a videographer. It's just going to make you the owner of a lot of video gear. So make sure that you practice before you go on a job. If you're starting with video, I recommend you start with shoots with friends. We call time for print. If you know some people that need a video, but it's just for fun, you want to start doing that. Also, you want to practice editing, because when you edit, this is something that in video, not in photography. When you shoot pictures, unless you're doing a commercial shot and it's going to an agency and they're going to take care of all the editing or all the retouching. Usually you shoot, you retouch your picture, and then you deliver. In video, some jobs only require you to shoot the video and not edit. But you want to start editing yourself, because editing will make you a better videographer. Because when you shoot video only and you don't edit, you don't know what you missed. You don't know what else you needed to shoot in order to make the video good. What we call B-roll is the details. If someone is talking about their specific product, if I say this camera, but I don't show the camera in the video, then you will never see. But if I say this camera and you shoot something, where you're showing the camera here or you're showing the camera here, then the people, when the edit is done, it's not just a person talking and you never see the product. You're showing everything that you need for your edit to work. So I recommend that you, besides practicing video shooting, you also start editing, and then you also start with basic sound, so that you can be a complete both photographer and videographer, and get more jobs that way.